The mere whisper of his name sends chills through the Seven Kingdoms. Maegor the Cruel, third Targaryen king, whose reign of terror would forever change Westeros. This is the story of the most feared ruler in the realm's history. Birth and the Seeds of Darkness, 12 AC. Born in 12 AC to Aegon I and Queen Visenya, Maegor's entry into the world was marked by omens that servants would only dare whisper about in the darkest corners of Dragonstone. The babe emerged, larger than any child the Maesters had seen, with unusual strength that seemed to hint at the power he would one day wield. Despite being Aegon's younger son, many believed him better suited to rule than his older half-brother, Aenys, who was born to Queen Rhaenys 5 years earlier. The contrast between the brothers was stark from their earliest days. Where Aenys was slight and timid, Maegor was massive and fierce. Queen Visenya, known for her mastery of dark Valyrian arts, took special interest in her son's development. Under her guidance, Maegor learned not just the arts of war, but ancient secrets that would later fuel his reign of terror. Some whispered that she performed blood rituals over his cradle, seeking to imbue him with powers beyond those of normal men. The question of succession created deep tensions within the Red Keep. Visenya openly championed Maegor's claim, arguing that strength should determine succession rather than birth order. However, Aegon the Conqueror remained firm. The traditions of Valyrian succession would be honoured. This decision planted the seeds of bitterness that would later bloom into unprecedented cruelty. Early years and martial prowess, 12 AC to 24 AC. While Aenys spent his youth playing the harp and writing poetry, Maegor's childhood was devoted to mastering the arts of war and pain. By age 8, he could wield a sword designed for grown men, his unusual strength allowing him to overpower boys twice his age. Training sessions frequently ended with serious injuries, and those who faced him spoke of an unsettling pleasure he seemed to take in causing harm. At 13, he became the youngest knight in the realm, his ceremony marked by a brutal display in the training yard that left 7 opponents maimed. His weapon of choice became Blackfire, his father's Valyrian steel sword, which seemed to sing with particular ferocity in his hands. Unlike other knights who trained to disarm, Maegor developed techniques specifically designed to inflict maximum suffering before death. Queen Visenya encouraged these violent tendencies, teaching him ancient Valyrian combat arts and what some whispered were darker magics. Under her guidance, Maegor became not just a warrior, but a master of terror. Even his father's most hardened knights grew to fear training sessions with the young prince, particularly after an incident where a knight's jest about Maegor's form resulted in the man's mysterious disappearance. His reputation for brutality grew alongside his martial prowess. Those who watched him train spoke of a methodical approach to violence, each strike calculated not just to wound, but to maximize pain. Master-at-Arms would later recall how young Maegor would spend hours studying anatomy with Maesters, not to heal, but to better understand how to harm.
Daemon would be a second Maegor, or worse. He is impulsive and violent. It is the duty of this council to protect the king and the realm from him.
Aenys' reign and growing tensions, 37 AC to 42 AC. When Aegon the Conqueror died in 37 AC, the fundamental differences between the brothers became a matter of realm-wide concern. Aenys' ascension revealed not just inadequacies as a ruler, but a fatal inability to inspire fear, the currency that had brought peace under Aegon's reign. The new king faced rebellion across the realm, but proved unable to respond with the necessary force. His conciliatory nature, once admired, became seen as weakness. Each attempted compromise only emboldened those who sought to test the dragon's resolve. Pretenders arose, claiming to be the sons of Aegon, and the faithful mounted serious challenges to Targaryen rule. Maegor, appointed as Hand of the King, dealt with these rebellions with characteristic brutality. While Aenys sought peaceful solutions, his brother delivered fire and blood. Villages that harbored rebels weren't just destroyed, they became object lessons in the cost of defiance. Survivors told tales of elaborate displays of cruelty that would make even hardened warriors lose their meals. The contrast between the brothers grew starker with each passing month. Aenys the Weak and Maegor the Cruel, as people began to call them. Where Aenys would spend hours in council seeking compromise, Maegor would simply mount Balerion and return with the heads of those who opposed him. The breaking point came with Maegor's second marriage. When he took Alice Harroway as wife while still married to Cerys Hightower, the Faith of the Seven erupted in outrage. Aenys, trying to avoid conflict, exiled his brother to Pentos rather than defend him against the Faith. This perceived betrayal would fester in Maegor's heart, transforming brotherly resentment into murderous hatred. Taking the throne, 42 AC. In 42 AC, when word reached Pentos that Aenys had died, some say poisoned by Visenya herself, Maegor returned to Westeros atop Balerion the Black Dread. The largest dragon ever seen in the Seven Kingdoms cast a shadow of death over King's Landing as Maegor laid claim to the Iron Throne, ignoring Aenys' named heir, young Prince Aegon. To cement his claim, Maegor declared a trial by combat, challenging any who opposed him. What followed became known as the Trial of the Seven, a spectacle of bloodshed that would haunt witnesses until their dying days. Maegor faced 7 of the realm's greatest warriors simultaneously, including members of the King's Guard and warriors' sons. The battle lasted hours, and those present described it not as combat, but as butchery. Maegor didn't simply kill his opponents, he systematically destroyed them, using Blackfire to dismember and torture, rather than deliver clean deaths. By the battle's end, the throne room floor had become a lake of blood, and Maegor, though grievously wounded, stood alone among 7 mutilated corpses. Some whispered that dark magic kept him alive, as no man should have survived such wounds. War against the Faith, 42 AC to 48 AC. Maegor's campaign against the Faith Militant became not just a war, but a systematic campaign of extermination that would redefine religious conflict in Westeros. The burning of the Sept of Remembrance marked his opening move, a calculated act of terror that demonstrated his willingness to break every sacred law. Rather than simply attack, Maegor waited until morning prayers, when thousands were gathered inside. As Balerion's black flames engulfed the Sept, Maegor had his soldiers seal all exits. Those outside heard the screams for hours as the Sept burned from top to bottom, its inhabitants suffering a slow death by fire or suffocation. His tactical brilliance paired with unprecedented cruelty. Each strike against the Faith was designed not just to kill, but to break the spirit of resistance. Septons were buried alive beneath their own septs, kept conscious through dark arts as their sanctuaries were demolished above them. The warriors' sons faced the 7 deaths, a horrific ritual where they were killed and revived repeatedly, each death dedicated to mocking one aspect of their faith. The construction of the Red Keep, 43 AC to 45 AC. The building of the Red Keep became Maegor's architectural testament to cruelty. He personally designed torture chambers within its walls, each room crafted for specific forms of suffering. The castle's foundations were said to be mixed with blood as much as mortar, and the screams of dying workers became a constant chorus during its construction. Workers who knew the secrets of the hidden passages were eliminated systematically. Maegor would hold great feasts to celebrate the completion of each section, only to have the workers sealed alive within the very walls they had built. Small air holes were left, allowing them to survive for weeks as construction continued around them. Their scratch marks can still be found in the castle's older sections. The castle became a maze of deadly traps and secret passages known only to Maegor himself. Some corridors were designed to flood with burning oil, while others would slowly narrow until they crushed intruders. The Widow's Way became infamous, a series of tunnels where captured stonemasons were forced to race against rising water levels, promised freedom if they could complete their section before drowning. Reign of Terror and the Marriages, 44 AC to 48 AC. Maegor's quest for an heir led to a succession of marriages that became increasingly horrific spectacles. Each wedding brought new innovations in cruelty, as if he were trying to outdo his previous atrocities. The death of his first wife, Jaehaerys Hightower, set the pattern. Found dead in her chambers, her body showed signs of systematic torture, each wound precisely inflicted to cause maximum pain without death. Servants spoke of hearing her screams for weeks before her death, though none dared intervene. Alice Harroway's fate proved even worse. Accused of infidelity, she faced the 40 days of pain, a carefully orchestrated sequence of tortures, each day focused on a different part of her body, with maesters kept on hand to prevent death until the final day. Her father was forced to witness every moment before meeting his own end. The Black Bride's ceremony marked the apex of his marital cruelty. 3 women, Eleanor Costane, Jane Westerling, and Rhaena Targaryen, were given a choice: marriage or watching their entire families fed to dragons. During the wedding feast, the heads of their recently executed relatives decorated the tables. The brides were forced to eat while seated next to their loved ones' remains.
Jaehaerys called the Great Council to prevent a war being fought over his succession, the only thing that could tear down the House of the Dragon.
The rise of Jaehaerys and Maegor's downfall, 48 AC. By 48 AC, Maegor's grip on power began to slip. The realm had grown wary of his endless cruelties, and a new threat emerged: his nephew, Jaehaerys, son of the late king Aenys. At just 14 years old, Jaehaerys made his claim for the Iron Throne from the safety of Storm's End, where he had found refuge with Lord Baratheon. Unlike his uncle, young Jaehaerys offered hope. He promised to heal the realm's wounds and reconcile with the faith. His sister wife, Alysanne, flying her dragon, Silverwing, helped rally support across the 7 kingdoms. One by one, the great houses began declaring for Jaehaerys. First the Baratheons, then the Tullys, followed by the Lannisters and Tyrells. Maegor's response was predictably brutal. He ordered the execution of any lord suspected of corresponding with Jaehaerys, but this only accelerated the defections. even his most loyal supporters began to abandon him, including his last remaining King's Guard. The sight of Balerion no longer inspired the terror it once had. The realm had seen too much horror to be cowed any longer. The death of the cruel king, 48 AC. On the 22nd day of the 9th moon of 48 AC, as Jaehaerys' forces approached King's Landing, Queen Eleanor found Maegor's body slumped upon the Iron Throne. The throne that his father had forged from the swords of his enemies had opened Maegor's wrists and throat with its bladed edges, his blood pooling at its base in dark patterns that servants would never fully remove. Whether it was suicide, murder, or something darker remains one of the most debated mysteries in Westerosi history. Guards outside the throne room spoke of hearing multiple voices within, though Maegor was alone when found. Most telling was the expression of pure terror frozen on the face of a man who had never known fear in life. Whatever ended Maegor the Cruel that night was terrible enough to frighten even the most feared man in Westeros. Time has not softened the memory of Maegor the Cruel. His 6-year reign stands as a dark testament to the dangers of absolute power wielded without mercy. The Red Keep, his most visible legacy, remains a maze of secrets and horrors, its shadowy corridors still claiming lives centuries later. His name became more than just a historical footnote. It became a warning. Through fire and blood, he forever changed the realm, breaking the military power of the Faith Militant at a terrible cost. Yet perhaps his most significant legacy was unintentional: the peace that followed. Jaehaerys I's golden age shone brighter in contrast to the darkness that preceded it. But how did a 14-year-old boy rebuild a realm shattered by such terror? The story of Jaehaerys I, the Conciliator, who would rule over 5 decades and become the greatest king Westeros had ever known. But that is a tale for another time. If you want to delve deeper into the dark histories of Westeros and uncover more stories from the Game of Thrones universe, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The story of House Targaryen has only begun.